Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Canada Pavilion at COP15, and thank you for joining us today. My name is Lauren Small, and I'm the Director of the Canada Pavilion for Environment and Climate Change Canada. Bonjour à tous. Je vous souhaite la bienvenue au Pavillon du Canada à la COP15, et merci de vous rejoindre à nous aujourd'hui. Je m'appelle Lauren Small, et je suis la directrice pour le Pavillon du Canada avec l'Environnement Changement climatique Canada. C'est avec plaisir que je vous présente notre prochain événement, Nourrir la nature, financement de solutions fondées sur la nature pour le climat, la biodiversité et les communautés, organisé par le Fonds d'investissement climatique. It's a pleasure for me to introduce our next event, Nurturing Nature, Financing Nature-Based Solutions for Climate, Biodiversity, and Communities, hosted by the Climate Investment Funds. This event will be moderated by Lana Wong. Lana is a creative communicator based in Washington, D.C. after working abroad for 17 years in London, Nairobi, and Paris. She has a wide-ranging experience as a BBC television presenter, photographer, educator, and creative director of the World Bank's Connect Climate Initiative. She is a founding member of the Diverse Speakers Bureau, moderates the panel, and has worked on communications, advocacy, and outreach for the Education Commission since 2016. Just before we start the panel, if you would please turn your phones to mute, that would be very helpful. Thank you. This will also be recorded. Cette session sera enregistrée. So please join me in welcoming Lana Wong.
Bonjour. Thank you so much for that kind introduction, and thank you to Canada for hosting us in this lovely pavilion. Thank you for those of you here in person, and also thank you for those of you joining online. Welcome to Nurturing Nature, Financing Nature-Based Solutions for Climate, Biodiversity, and Communities. My name is Lana Wong, and I'd like to begin first by acknowledging that our event today is taking place on unceded Indigenous lands. We recognize the Mohawk Nation as custodians of the lands and waters on which we gather today. Montreal is historically known as a gathering place for many First Nations. Today, it is home to a diverse population of Indigenous and other peoples. We respect the continued connections with the past, present, and future in our ongoing relationships with Indigenous and other peoples within the Montreal community. So today is COP15's Women and Youth Day, and we have really taken that theme to heart. We are so fortunate to have with us many incredible women, youth, Indigenous, and government leaders who support nature-based solutions and will help us learn more about the Climate Investment Fund's exciting new Nature, People, and Climate program, or the CIF NPC. The CIF NPC recognizes and supports the critical interconnections between land use, climate adaptation and mitigation, and biodiversity, and of course, people. We have an action-packed hour ahead. First, we'll kick off with an opening keynote from Catherine McKenna, the Principal of Climate and Nature Solutions and Canada's former Minister of Environment and Climate Change. Then we'll move to a fireside chat with an all-female panel of Indigenous and youth leaders who are on the front lines of implementing nature-based solutions. We'll learn about the CIF NPC's unique dedicated grant mechanism that provides direct financing to Indigenous people and local communities and also prioritizes women and youth. Then we'll hear from Johan Rockstrom, the director of the Potsdam Institute, and move to our second panel with government leaders to discuss the urgent need to scale up financing for nature-based solutions and how the CIF NPC program will help to narrow the nature financing gap. So we'll wrap up with closing remarks from the CEO of the Climate Investment Funds, Mafalda Duarte. So without further ado, let's learn more about how we can truly nurture nature and connect the dots between climate finance, biodiversity, and communities. It's now my pleasure to introduce Catherine McKenna for the opening keynote.
Thank you very much, Lana. Welcome to everyone. And it's great to see all these amazing women and lots of women and men supporting women in the audience. I also want to recognize the traditional territory we're on of the Mohawk, but many other nations. And I just noticed today that if you're not Canadian, we have different Indigenous peoples. We have First Nations, my earrings, First Nations. We have Métis, I have a Métis beaded pin, and Inuit, so I have seal. So I'm representing our Indigenous communities around Canada. And that's part of the reason I'm so excited to be here today. I mean, first of all, I'm most excited to be here because my good friend Mafalda Duarte she spearheads the climate investment funds and has been a real leader and a real champion. So when we talk about women leading on climate and nature, Mafalda is certainly one of them. And look, we have a huge challenge. Well, we have many challenges right now. But two of the biggest ones are interconnected. They're climate and their nature. And sometimes we have a problem because we just came. How many people were at COP 27? And you're still standing or sitting. It's hard to come from a climate COP in Egypt to a biodiversity COP in Canada, but I think it's also problematic because there seems to be a big gulf often between climate action and action on nature. We need to align those two because there is no solution to the climate crisis or to the biodiversity crisis without bringing them together and actually looking at them as a whole. So it's great that that is what we're going to be talking about today. And it's also great that we have representatives from communities around the world. I think that's also really important because we're not going to get to a solution unless we work together. And part of that is scale. That's scale in terms of actually scaling solutions, but that's scale in terms of money. And often we hear from folks in the private sector, there's lots of money out there to invest. But the problem is we aren't seeing it flow at scale. And that's why we need people like Mafalda. That's why we need the climate investment funds that are looking at innovative financing tools. How do we actually not just rely on government money? I was in government. Let me tell you, there's a limit to money. Although I was very proud that the government of Canada under Justin Trudeau announced $1 billion to support CIF's work on getting the world off coal, especially particular countries, large emitters in developing countries. But we need to figure out how do we do that on nature as well, and how do we do that in a way that supports people that are finding solutions and that need to be leading the way. We need Indigenous peoples leading the way on these solutions, but of course, they need to be supported and they need money to be able to do what they need to do, which is good for nature, but I often hear that it's also about these communities. It's about economic opportunities. It's about jobs. In Canada's case, it's about reconciliation with Indigenous peoples, and it's finding a better path forward. And that's why it's so exciting to learn about the Nature, People, and Climate platform that CIF is launching. It's unique, it's innovative, and it's going to provide direct support for Indigenous peoples and local communities. And what's incredibly important is it breaks down the silos between mitigation and adaptation, looking at forestry and coastal resilience. But also it does something that is really hard. It brings folks together. So there are all these different development banks, and they often work autonomously. And you need someone or some vehicle that's going to bring them all together and really figure out how to address frontier climate and nature challenges that, quite frankly, these multilateral development banks and governments can't do on their own. You need patient risk capital and unique solutions. And that's what we're going to hear about today. And this is how we're all going to dig deep and actually figure out how we're going to tackle these challenges. Because it's not enough to just talk about them. and to talk about the problems of capital and not, figuring out how to get the capital that we need out there. It's about actually deploying the capital. It's about some folks that are going to take the risks, that are going to be able to bring other capital. And it's about supporting communities and people that are represented today so that they can do what we need to be doing both on climate and nature-based solutions. I do take some solace that in the final text, and we don't know what the final text will be here, but at COP27, there was mention of nature-based solutions. As I said, we really need to be focused on how do we bring together climate and nature. So I think that was an important first step. I'm very hopeful that we'll get an ambitious agreement here, but there are also a lot of other things that happen at COPs and a lot of other tools are out there. And this is an example today. Once again, big congratulations to the climate investment funds. I know the whole team. We actually have, I'm just noticing one of our Indigenous leaders, Perry Bellegarde, Canadian, the head of the Assembly of First Nations. We probably have many other Indigenous peoples here, but I'm very excited to see all the solutions that folks have been working on in communities for a very long time finally getting the support that they need. So with that, I'm going to hand it over. I'm not a very fancy keynote speaker, so that's what you've got, but you're here not to listen to me. You're actually here to listen to these awesome women talk about what they're doing and what's happening in their own communities. Thank you. Et est-ce qu'il y a des francophones ici? Je suis plus ministre, alors j'ai pas parlé en français, je m'excuse, but I'm not minister anymore. Otherwise, I would have had to do half my speech in French, but we are in Montreal, and certainly hope everyone has a good time and a good winter coat, especially for tomorrow. Anyway, good luck. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup, Catherine McKenna, and thank you for making that call to connect climate and nature, and that's exactly what CIF has done with this new Nature, People, and Climate program. So now let's turn to our fireside chat. A defining feature of the CIF NPC program is that it really does put the Indigenous peoples and local communities at the center of global efforts to implement nature-based solutions. So we're fortunate to have with us here today these incredible women who will share with us their Indigenous, feminist, and youth perspectives on what they're doing to really implement nature-based solutions on the ground. So I'm honored to share our stage here today with Cécile Bibiane Njebet, who is the founder and president of the African Women's Network for Community Management of Forests. And then to my right, I have Rocio Mendez, who is a dedicated grant mechanism Indigenous Youth Fellow, and also her Spanish interpreter, Raymond Robitaille. We are waiting on one more panelist, so hopefully excuse us if we have a little disruption, but let's get straight in there. Time is short. Cécile, first of all, I'd like to congratulate you on winning the 2022 Wangari Maathai Forest Champions Award for your energy and dedication for over 3 decades on promoting women's rights to land and forests. And you were also just recently, yes, that deserves a hand. And not only that, you're going to have to clap again, because Cécile was also just recently named the UN Environment Programme's Champion of the Earth, which is one of the UN's highest environmental honors. So, yes. So Cécile, can you please tell us about your work as a forest champion and the impact that you've seen on the front lines of nature-based solutions, thanks to the collective power of women?
Yes, thank you very much, and thank you for the great opportunity. Yes, of course, I would like to share what we are doing, and let me just start that we are doing great things, great job, moving from where we are and trying to push for more positive impact on women. So first of all, I think that is very important. Very important. The nature-based solution is very important for for that scheme to focus on women, indigenous women and local community women and girls because of the great work they are doing. And the DGM, we have a great initiative that has proven the efficiency and the great support the DGM is bringing to women on the ground. And today, I'm happy to share with you that what we are doing so far in the 20 countries our network is covering is part of DGM funding support. Let me share a little bit what we are doing in Togo. In Togo, women are doing, anyway, in Togo, Cote d'Ivoire, the Gambia, the DRC, Cameroon, Congo-Brazzaville, women have started establishing agroforestry plantations. In those agroforestry plantations, women are planting trees in association with food crops. And when the trees grow up and women are taking back the food that is there, those that are getting food. And in Togo, we have two types of agroforestry plantation, and we are working there with 200 women. We have 100 women planting trees in association with soya beans, and another 100 women planting trees in association with cassava. At this moment, women in Togo, they are now taking out their soya beans, and it's great to see how many tons of soybeans are coming out from what they have done like a year ago. And next June, they will be taking off the cassava, and they have planned to process the cassava into what we call gari in local language. And you can't believe for that little the great impact which is created. So just say they have planted 365 in one side trees, in the other side 288, around 300,000 also of 300,000 trees in the other side. And they have got the land from the local traditional chiefs, because in our context, in our countries, women own no land. They don't have ownership to land. So they have to negotiate to get land, degraded land that they have to give back to life and plant trees. So the humanity will benefit from trees. Women are benefiting from food for the families, food for the communities, and also they are making a lot of money in selling the surplus of the food. So this is a scheme where we have winning-winning. As they are promoting, as they are restoring the degraded land, they are also helping to address climate change, because planting trees, we know how important trees are for the climate, and also getting some money. So they are happy with what they are doing because they have food, they have money, and the nature is benefiting from their work. This example, we can cite them in the Gambia, in Cote d'Ivoire, in the DRC, in Cameroon, in Liberia. So we are doing that. Now our project is to plant 20 million trees as our contribution to ecosystem restoration decade. So the DGM, we believe in that mechanism because we know it's directly funding women. And we are happy that there are a new initiative with DGM, and we are hopeful that they will fund this 20 million initiative of the women in Africa, because they have chosen their efficiency, and we believe in DGM as a direct funding sources for the women. And this type of mechanism are very important for us. At least we don't have to follow all these sometimes very, very difficult processes, and sometimes completely excluded. So the DGM is for us a great opportunity to have direct funding to upscale what we are doing now, because we don't need evidence to show what women are doing. The evidence is there. What we need now is funding to upscale all what we are doing and to make great impact. In Africa, let me tell you, if you don't support women, Africa will never achieve anything. We are here for the framework, okay? Global framework on biodiversity. Who will be going to implement? Women, the youth, and the girls on the ground. Our administrators will be there to provide enabling environment, but they are not operationalizing anything on the ground. Give the support to women and you'll have the framework implemented. Thank you very much.
Here, Cecile. Thank you so much for that inspiration and that energy, and for all the work that you're doing, mobilizing this 20 million tree campaign. So now, let's turn to Mexico. Rocio. So, the CIF NPC program has the dedicated grant mechanism, this DGM that we've been talking about, that provides direct financing to Indigenous people and local communities. And so you are actually a DGM Indigenous Youth Fellow. Can you tell us a bit about your work as a youth fellow and how the DGM funding has made a difference in your community?
Buenas tardes a todos. Como me acaban de presentar, mi nombre es Rocio Mendez. Formo parte de una red de promotores locales dentro de lo que es el mecanismo dedicado específico para pueblos indígenas y comunidades locales. En México habemos muchos pueblos indígenas, en Oaxaca aún más. Bueno, en México el proyecto, hay 86 subproyectos apoyados por este apoyo de MDE en diferentes actividades productivas, dentro de los cuales está ecoturismo, manejo de bosques forestales, sistemas agroforestales, silvopastoriles, y también se está trabajando con el tema de gobernanza comunitaria.
Okay, how are you doing? So my name is Rocio Aguilar Mendez. I am a dedicated grant mechanism Indigenous Youth Fellow from Oaxaca in Mexico. And I am one among quite a few recipients of support. There are 86 projects in our region. And they cover different activities and productive activities, including tourism, forestry, agroforestry also.
Bien, en México, entonces, en 5 estados está la presencia de MDE, del mecanismo, en donde hay más de 500 personas beneficiadas. Dentro de estas personas estamos hablando de hombres, de mujeres y de jóvenes. Quiero hacer hincapié en que estamos participando jóvenes y mujeres que no tenemos derechos agrarios y que en otros espacios no se nos había dado la oportunidad de formar parte de estos procesos.
So the project covers 5 states in Mexico. There are 500 beneficiaries, including men, women, and youth. And in the case of women, we don't have land tenure rights.
Bien, ahora les voy a hablar un poquito más de Oaxaca, el estado de donde yo vengo. En Oaxaca yo acompaño a 3 subproyectos. Tengo 7 compañeros más, hombres y mujeres jóvenes, que estamos incidiendo en estos proyectos. Yo acompaño, como mencionaba hace un momento, a 622 productores de café. Traigo una muestra aquí, y lo que yo traigo aquí son los sueños de muchas familias campesinas mexicanas, oaxaqueñas, de etnia zapoteca, que todos los días nos esforzamos por producir este café con un sello orgánico.
So I'll talk now about the state of Oaxaca, where I'm located. There are 13 projects in our state that are managed by 13 facilitators. In my case, I am working with 622 coffee producers. And here I have a bag of coffee from these producers. This represents a dream of many families, and these are Zapoteca indigenous families.
Ok. Bueno, dentro de estos proyectos en los que nosotros estamos siendo apoyados por el mecanismo, pues me gusta resaltar primero que justamente es eso, estamos siendo apoyados para el desarrollo de nuestras capacidades, porque nosotros como pueblos indígenas conocemos perfectamente bien nuestros territorios. Hemos identificado a través de la historia todo lo que nuestros abuelos y nuestros ancestros nos han ido regalando. Entonces, a través de estos mecanismos, nosotros estamos desarrollando capacidades, tanto técnicas como sociales, para poder mantener la identidad de nuestras comunidades como cafetaleras.
So the mechanism is supporting us in different activities. One of the activities that's really important is capacity building. In certain aspects, capacity building, which are mainly technical and social, because we already have a lot of knowledge. We know our territories, we know what the situation is on the ground, and we have learned a lot from our grandparents and our ancestors.
Bien. Además de esto, quiero mencionar que a través del MDE nosotros hemos podido tener intercambios de conocimiento, como es este espacio ahorita, lo cual agradezco porque se nos está abriendo camino para que más personas conozcan lo que estamos haciendo desde nuestros rincones. Por otro lado, también adicionalmente a este intercambio hemos tenido otros con otros compañeros de otros estados de México que también están desarrollando actividades, pero también a nivel mundial, en donde tiene cobertura este proyecto. Y eso nos enriquece mucho, nos llena de posibilidades, porque sabemos que no estamos solos, que hay más personas, que hay más pueblos indígenas, que hay más jóvenes, que hay más mujeres y que juntos podemos hacer grandes cosas a favor del medio ambiente.
So one of the activities that we have also is like knowledge exchanges with people from other areas of Mexico and also from elsewhere in the world. And in these exchanges, this allows us to see that we are not alone in what we are doing, and that these exchanges are with other indigenous people, among other things.
Bueno, y para terminar, para no hacer muy largo esto, solamente quisiera decir que aquí estoy yo, pero estoy representando a muchas mujeres que día a día tienen que luchar para poder realizar actividades en campo, porque más allá de ser mujeres son madres, son esposas y están incluidas realizando muchas actividades, muchas labores, buenas prácticas. Estamos tratando cada día de ir reconociendo nuestras semillas nativas, nuestros árboles nativos, nuestra flora nativa, nuestra fauna, y empezamos a realizar diferentes actividades en pro de la conservación de nuestro medio ambiente. Por otro lado, también nosotros como jóvenes nos inculcan nuestros padres, nuestros abuelos, nuestras madres a seguir realizando lo que son para nosotros nuestros saberes y nuestras tradiciones. Agradecemos a la Madre Tierra cada año, pedimos por una cosecha y desde luego agradecemos las bondades que la Madre Tierra nos da.
So I am here as a representative of many women in my country who are mothers and who are spouses and who are working in many different ways, developing good practices. One of the things that we do is we are working with native seeds, native plants, and animals, and we are working on conserving our environment, following the worldview of indigenous people.
Thank you so much. Muchas gracias, Rocio. Merci beaucoup, Cecile, Rocio. It's great to hear your stories from the ground and all the work you're doing mobilizing women, youth, girls, and we thank you for the commitment that you have to nature-based solutions. So on that, we'll wrap up our fireside chat. I'm looking at the time. We have such a packed program and great speakers in the house. So if I can please welcome, we're going to transition our panels, and I'm going to call our second panelists up for the chairs. But in the meantime, excuse the transition, but we also have a video to watch. So let me thank you all. I will transition to the side here. Thank you. So our second panel.
To addressing climate change. Currently, natural ecosystems sequester around 29% of man-made emissions. However, nature-based solutions to the climate crisis are not simple. Trade-offs are necessary, and many complex pieces must fit together. The Climate Investment Fund's Nature, People, and Climate Program provides climate financing to developing countries, supporting the sustainable management of natural resources. It helps them navigate the intricate relationship between land use, livelihoods, and climate change. The program's integrated land management approach addresses both environmental and social needs, delivering multiple benefits through mitigation and adaptation climate strategies. A unique feature is the program's dedicated grant mechanism, a direct funding tool that supports Indigenous people and local communities and helps them contribute their holistic knowledge and experience to climate actions and solutions. The Climate Investment Fund's Nature, People, and Climate Program helps developing countries establish sustainable practices that harness nature's restorative potential for people and the planet.
Okay, thank you for that. So now if we can turn to the screen for our intermission keynote address before we head into our panel, as we have Dr. Johan Rockstrom's message for us on bending the curve on environmental degradation and biodiversity loss, from science to finance.
So dear CIF colleagues, friends, COP15 in Montreal is so important because science is clear. We're so deep into the Anthropocene, the new geological epoch where we, the modern world, are not only the dominating force of change on Earth, we're also approaching tipping points and are at risk of irreversibly undermining life support systems that enable humans and all species to thrive on Earth. The first victims of nature's contributions to people are already now on the line. Tropical coral reef systems, home and livelihoods to hundreds of millions of people across the world, are at threat. Tropical forest systems, terrestrial Earth's richest biomes, close to irreversible regime shifts, drying out of and ultimately the risk of collapsing. Ice sheets melting so fast that freshwater supply is threatened and sea level rise pushing coastal communities inland. We can now say with high degree of scientific certainty that sustainability, with net zero pathways for both climate and nature, is necessary to have a chance of attaining the Sustainable Development Goals. If it were not for nature, we would already have breached the Paris climate limit of 1.5 degrees Celsius, and as global temperatures continue to rise, the larger is the impact on nature, which in turn leads to continued loss of human life support for food, water, air, and livable environments. Species of plants and animals are already moving higher to higher ground and to colder ground. People move as well when social resilience is lost. So the question is there a safe, just landing for humanity on Earth? The window is rapidly closing, but most science shows that there are feasible pathways still available. But we need to urgently and collectively act on the global scale. 3 immediate steps are on the table. Number 1, adopt science-based targets for all planetary boundaries. These safe and just Earth system boundaries are now advanced by the Earth Commission and operationalized for businesses, for cities, for nations by the Science Based Target Network. Adopt them and internalize them. 2. Scale nature-based solutions for health of people and planet, but ensure that they are scientifically robust and that they are additional to mitigation. All cities, businesses, countries must follow the carbon law for fossil fuel phase-out, but also the carbon law for nature, of turning managed nature, agricultural landscapes, from source to sink. And 3, put a price on carbon and value natural capital. Rapidly phase out all subsidies to fossil fuels, $1 trillion per year in direct subsidies today, $4 trillion in indirect subsidies. This is just proof that there is no lack of finance for a sustainable transformation of nature-based solutions that we all benefit from if we are truly putting value not only on human and financial capital, but also natural capital. Thank you.
Thank you for those words, Dr. Rockstrom. And so now let's turn to our panel, which is on financing. As we know, despite nature's critical economic and social impact, there's still a huge and growing finance gap for nature investments. And it's estimated an average of US $700 billion per year. When the Nature, People, and Climate Investment Program was announced this summer at Stockholm Plus 50, 1/3 of the developing world formally applied for funding. That's 55 countries. But today, only 4 countries and 1 region are able to go forward right now with their plans. So we're grateful to the countries that are beginning to step up and make new pledges to narrow this financing gap for nature in developing countries. And we hope that the momentum generated here at COP15 can really help to encourage other countries to follow suit. So we have leaders from some of these committed donors here with us today, as well as a CIF NPC recipient country, the Dominican Republic. So let me introduce our panelists. To my right here is Her Excellency Minister Romina Pourmokhtari, the Minister for Climate and Environment from Sweden. Then we have Jochen Flasbarth, the State Secretary in the Federal Ministry for Economic Cooperation and Development in Germany. We have Maria Jesus Rodriguez de Sancho, the Director General of Biodiversity, Forests, and Desertification of the Ministry for the Ecological Transition and the Demographic Challenge in Spain. And then we have Isabella Hernandez from the Ministry of Environment and Natural Resources from the Dominican Republic. So before we dive into our conversation, we do have one more video message from the Minister for Foreign Trade and Development Cooperation of the Netherlands, Lisa Schrijnemacher.
Ladies and gentlemen, biodiversity loss and climate change are 2 sides of the same coin. Both are threats to humanity caused by humanity. And the Netherlands views both with grave concern. We can and must address these crises in concert. But tackling the joint threats of climate change, biodiversity loss, and land degradation will require more investment. And this is clear from the latest State of Finance for Nature. To achieve our goals, we will need to double investment in nature-based solutions from both public and private sources. The Netherlands is committed to action and fully supports international efforts to scale up investments in nature. So today, I'm pleased to announce that the Netherlands will contribute $50 million to the Nature, People, and Climate Program of the Climate Investment Funds. This is in line with our commitment to increase biodiversity finance by 50% by 2025. We have high expectations of this program to accelerate action on the ground, because nature-based solutions are key to reducing the impacts of climate change. And they also provide a range of other benefits such as clearer air, cleaner water, and increased biodiversity. Investing in nature allows us to improve human health and food security. It allows us to contribute to gender equality and to enhance respect for human rights, and to empower indigenous communities. In short, investing in nature means investing in people. That's why the climate investment funds have a key role to play and why you will find the Netherlands at your side. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister Schreinermacher, for that fantastic message and announcement of support. The minister said it best when she said investing in nature is investing in people, because that's exactly what the CIF NPC is trying to do as well. So we'd really like to thank the Netherlands for this generous $50 million contribution that will help unlock much needed funding for countries that have applied for support from the CIF NPC. So the Netherlands is joining Italy, the United Kingdom, Sweden, Spain, and Germany, who all together have pledged more than $350 million to the CIF Nature, People, and Climate Program. So time is short. Let's hear from our donors and our recipient country representatives here. I'm going to just pose the same question to all of our donor representatives, and that is, can you tell us what your country is doing globally to help bridge the to help bridge the nature finance gap, and how these investments support your overall efforts to combat climate change? So Minister Pourmokhtari from Sweden, I'd like to start with you.
Thank you, and thank you very much for the invitation to take part in these very important discussions. We are gathered here for COP15, and this event is at a time of both urgency and opportunity. We have all heard how human land use contributes to greenhouse gas emissions, and we also know that extensive work is ongoing to advance nature-based solutions in support of efforts to address also climate change. When it comes to finance, funding is definitely needed, indeed, and making all financial flows consistent with a pathway towards low GHG emissions and climate resilience development is a key to achieving all of the other goals and in the Paris Agreement as well. And we very much value our cooperation with CIF, and we are glad to have contributed financially to the Nature, People and Climate Program. And Sweden is also a large contributor to JEF, and the recently completed 8th replenishment to the JEF 8, will be a very substantial contribution, and is a doubling of the contribution from Sweden's part. And it is important for us to keep seeing development where the increased focus on biodiversity is being shown, and it is welcome that in the JEF 8, it gives a stronger role in advancing efforts towards strengthening the work for nature. So Sweden also strongly supports the JEF efforts to unite interrelated concerns, such as biodiversity, climate change, chemicals and waste, and also ocean management and land degradation. And we also value the increased focus on the least developed countries, the LDCs, in JEF 8, which we also see as an important part of the developing of the funding. And when it comes to nature-based solutions, we need more actors on board. And I do believe that we are many who would like to contribute to this agenda. For instance, I think that there are a great number of landowners, farmers and forest companies, and also actors in the corporate sector that wants to make a part in improving both nature and climate. And if we complement these actors' willingness to engage with the development of good and effective practices of nature-based solutions as well as funding, I think that there's a big possibility to accelerate the agenda further. And in Sweden, we have seen this as a success, to find these points of cooperation also with a great number of actors. And when working with nature, it is important to understand how the ecosystems works and how multiple ecosystem services can be achieved. And my government is putting 200 million Swedish kroner each year for the restoration and re-wetting of drained wetlands and petlands. And this way, reliable nature-based solutions have been developed, while we at the same time expect to also reduce greenhouse gas emissions and over-nutrification. So we also see improvements, of course, regards to biodiversity and adaptation and water balance and groundwater, but at the same time we find the kind of double effects when also reducing greenhouse gas emissions. So these types of efficient ways are very important, and we also try to focus on making the monies stable, so making the investments as permanent as possible, and making sure that all actors in society can rely on the fact that the money will not come and go depending on what year it is and what funding it is, but that it is a stable development where the money will be there, and the investment is somewhat assured in a different way. And in essence, this will make the finance more efficient and effective while targeting several SDGs at the same time. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you. Thank you for that point on partnerships. Let's now move to Germany. State Secretary Jochen Flasbarth, can you tell us what Germany is doing on the investment front for nature-based solutions and climate?
Yes, I can, and thanks for having me here. As some might have heard, at the moment I'm facilitating together with my dear colleague Jean-Jacques Muyava Maria from Rwanda on resource mobilization and financing. So I'm jumping from one regional group to the other to try to find common ground. And so it's like filling the batteries to see what it is all about being here at this event. And I think nature-based solutions, and Johan Rockstrom referred to it, are an excellent opportunity to make more out of the existing money and out of the coming money to come, because we are addressing different issues that we have to solve: biodiversity, climate, land degradation, and at the same time serving people on the ground, creating jobs and helping local communities. So this is very close to my heart, and all the numbers we heard, I always saw my father smiling. So of course it's very much appreciated that the CIF's paying so much attention on that to scale up the financing. We spoke about that at COP27 in Sharm el-Sheikh, and identified a first group for the proposal on nature, people, and climate. Now we are adding another group, and I'm really happy also to announce for Germany that we are going to provide another 30 million euros for the CIF. And let me just put this into the bigger picture. Our Chancellor announced that we are going to pledge 1.5 billion euros annually to be increased until 2020, but we want to reach the annual payment of 1.5 billion in 2025. And it is not just about the total number. This is money coming from our budget, and of course we want to make the best out of it. So the more we can capitalize on this budgetary money, the more we have for biodiversity and climate and people to work on the ground. And we heard it from Johan Rockstrom, and you mentioned it, that we're still facing such a huge gap on the one side for the overall finance of biodiversity, and on the other side that we are directing money into, well, the wrong channels. And just to combine this with the discussion we have here, the subsidies, the biodiversity harmful subsidies are at the moment still 3 to 7 times higher than the investments into nature-based solutions. So that gives us an idea how much we can do with directing our policies with a focus to biodiversity to climate without touching basically on the financial situation of a country at all. So let me use or misuse, not misuse, this event to make just two more announcements because they are so much fitting to what we are discussing here with the CIFs. And the one is that we also want to involve local communities and indigenous people in implementing biodiversity protection, nature conservation on the ground. And we have one project running in Madagascar. It's called Paré. And this is where the restoration is done by local communities and indigenous people. And today I can announce that also for Paré we will pledge another 10 million euros. And to finalize, not to bore you here, also with regard to restoration, we will pledge another 40 million euros for African 100. I think restoration is really another quality we are just discussing since a couple of years now, because it can make such a big difference. Of course, the old approach was just to protecting what we have, but we see that this is not sufficient, and that is a framing of nature positive. And nature positive is restoration, usually with regard to forests, and it's not easy to do. Sometimes I say every idiot can plant a tree, but to restore a landscape, much more is needed. And it can serve for biodiversity. It definitely serves for climate, for holding the water, for keeping the soil, and finally to create jobs. So very happy to be here at this event.
Dankeschön. Thank you so much for being here. And, you know, they say the holidays are the season of giving, so we are thankful to Germany for those great announcements. Let's move on to Spain. So if we could hear from Director General Maria Rodriguez, please.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you for inviting me and giving the opportunity to address this important issue in this side event for nurturing nature. Well, allow me to start by underlining again the interdependencies between threats of biodiversity loss, climate change, and desertification. We have 3 conventions coming from Rio Summit in 1992, but very often the United Nations Convention to Combat Desertification is forgotten in statements. But we believe that these 3 issues have to be addressed together, also for ensuring major investment in nature. The Mediterranean region, where my country is geographically located, is among the most vulnerable areas of the planet with respect to the effects of climate change. Spain is actually facing significant risks that affect directly or indirectly our ecological systems, accelerating deterioration of essential resources for our well-being, such as water, soil, fertile soil, or biodiversity, and threatening people's quality of life and health. Also, as many other countries across the different global regions, we are suffering prolonged droughts, heat waves, and large forest fires, which are all obvious expressions of the devastating impact of the global climate emergency. In addition, the increasing loss of biodiversity and the degradation of the ecosystems from unsustainable practices are already key risks for all regions without exception. It is therefore essential to adopt an integrated approach to stop the loss of biodiversity, soil degradation, and climate change. In this regard, nature-based solutions need to be fully enhanced and deployed as they are a useful tool to respond to these interconnected objectives, enhancing synergies and efficient use of the resources, and contributing to biodiversity conservation. Spain very much supports holistic approaches, such as this Nature, People and Climate Program of the Climate Investment Funds that aims and enhance nature-based solutions in response to biodiversity and climate challenges, to which my country has recently announced a contribution of more than 9 million euros. We are proud and glad of contributing to this program that represents an innovative approach and a great opportunity to address environmental challenges, building on country-driven, local and traditional knowledge. With a similar focus on an integrated approach toward global challenges, Spain launched the International Alliance for Drought Resilience at the COP27 with an initial contribution of 5 million euros. There are just two examples on how important it is to continue harnessing synergies arising from climate finance, ecosystems, biodiversity, and many other co-benefits. At this COP, we absolutely agree on an ambitious global biodiversity framework, and Spain is fully committed to continue to work during the upcoming days for achieving successful results. This global framework also needs to be supported by an adequate consideration of the financial resources for its implementation, which will require mobilizing resources from all sources, both public and private, and both domestically and internationally. We participate also in the previous statement from donors, where Spain have the commitment to double the effort of financing biodiversity in the coming 5 years. Increasing the efficiency and effectiveness of the use of existing resources is also very important, and ensuring that the investments really have an impact on the reduction of the current tendencies of biodiversity loss, and also ensure further alignment of different flows with biodiversity objectives are also very important elements for reducing the nature financing gap. We believe also that investing in nature is investing in people and is fundamental to human existence and prosperity for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm looking at the time. I'm sorry, we are very short on time, but I do want to make sure we hear from our donor, our recipient country, Dominican Republic. So, Isabella, can you please tell us, as one of the recipient countries, how this program is going to make a difference?
Thank you very much. For us, it's a pleasure to be here sharing with you our experiences. We are recently part of this new framework. We just formed the alliance after COP27. So we, through this program, we are addressing a very important solution that we need to find for a very special area that we have in Dominican Republic. That is called Yuna River Basin. Yuna River Basin has so many wetlands that are very important for biodiversity and for production, and even is surrounded by 3, I think, protected areas. And that's why it's so important to keep the harmony between all these production systems and the protected areas as well. The protected areas, as you may know, if they have production systems surrounding it, they tend to be so pressured about many activities. That is why, through this project, we will be, first of all, working in an enabling environment. This is community and institutional capacity building and strengthening the governance for the framework to be implemented, participatory development of watershed and coastal spatial planning that come hand in hand with Target 2 that we are addressing through this global biodiversity framework, development of blue economy strategy and action plan, development of MRV systems, and development of standards
and certifications for sustainable production. That is very important for us to be in a sustainable manner producing in this way. And last but not least, in supporting the actors in preparing the bankable projects. So our actions through this environment, enabling environment that we just created previously, we are going to make 3 kinds of restoration. One, to improve agriculture by agroforestry. Second one, to improve the land that is degraded. The third one is to improve the riparian forest. All of these are assisted restoration. The riparian forest is very important for the watershed to be restored and the hydrological system of the Yuna River that we just mentioned to be restored again. And last but not least, the restoration for cattle to be productive and sustainable, and not in this intensive way that it always has been. And all these measures are going to be hand in hand with enabling the system of rice production to be sustainable by creating the channels for water to get into the systems without recollecting the water from the river. So that's why, and that's how we're going to work with the emissions that these productive systems of rice tend to give to the environment. And all of this will be cross-cutting with the mangrove restoration and conservation for the protection of the existing forest that there is in the area. And how are we going to protect this mangrove? We are going to protect this since sea to land.
Thank you so much. I'm so sorry we're just saying that the Canadian Pavilion needs to turn over our event. So thank you so much for that. It's great to hear the plans that are going forward. I apologize. I do want to recognize all of you, thank this wonderful panel, and also call up the CEO of the CIFs, Mafalda Duarte, for closing remarks.
We've run out of time, so I was going to say a few more things, but I'll keep it very short. Let me thank the Canadian government for hosting this COP and hosting us in the pavilion as well. This is actually the first time that the climate investment funds are in a COP, Biodiversity COP, which is also a signal of trying to build bridges between these different conventions. As the representative from Spain was saying, eventually maybe we'll get to the point where we have one COP of all of the conventions and we merge these conventions and do this integrated work that is so much necessary. It's also not it's not random that we propose to do this event on Women and Youth Day. And we had the first panel with women leaders and youth leaders from developing countries. Because we have seen over the years, we have programs, we have been financing women leaders, local action, what we call decentralized finance, local action, the dedicated grant mechanism for Indigenous people and local communities being one of them. And we have seen the impact, the incredible impact. So you've heard from them. I have had the honor and privilege to go and visit some of the projects. I was actually in Oaxaca, in Mexico, and I was not that long ago, before COVID, in Burkina Faso, and saw the impact of the investments there as well. Women leading those investments, the local communities leading those investments. So it's not random that we also wanted to have it in this day to send a very clear message of the importance that we give to empowering the local communities, women and youth, through mechanisms that decentralize the finance, because we need these approaches. We need a combination of approaches as well. We are very grateful to our contributors that have enabled us to launch the program at Stockholm Plus 50. And we were able at the COP in Sharm el Sheikh to announce the first group of 5 countries because of the generous contributions we've heard from Netherlands and Germany today. We'll be able to support more countries, so to Italy, who's not here, to UK, who's not here, Spain, Germany, Sweden, and Netherlands, thank you very much. You've heard a little bit of what we are trying to do. We are trying to draw from the lessons that we have learned from our more than 14 years of work and bring it all together and drive integrated, holistic approaches to tackle these multiple challenges. And we have to reckon what we are actually doing to nature, we are doing to ourselves. So with that, we have to close. I'm being waved all over. Thank you all very much for participating, coming. Look forward to working with many of you.